104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. Now brought to you by our friends at Mohawk Army Navy. It's Field Yates. Field, the big question, the Bills bench Tyrod Taylor, right move?
I think it depends on what your definition of right is. Because if the question is, does this give him a better chance to make the playoffs this season, the answer is an obvious no. If the question is there a possibility that the Bills aren't convinced that Tyrod Taylor is their long-term answer at quarterback, and would it behoove them to examine Nathan Peterman for 7 games to decide whether or not they have to dip their toe into the 2018 quarterback market? Then the answer could be yes. I think on the whole, I understand both sides. What I would tell people is this, is that when you are evaluating a move made by an NFL team, or really for any franchise in sports, it's important to not try and apply your own logic, but to understand the logic of the person that made the decision. I say that because you may not agree with what they're doing, but if you at least understand the angle they're coming from, you at least might be able to rationalize it a little bit more.
Oh, I like that. Okay, I'm with you. And as I look at this Bills team, Field, I like they trade away their big talent for draft picks. They keep moving people. Now they're doing this. It just seems like a team that is not concerned with this year whatsoever, and it is all about building a team that will not only break that playoff drought but get to the Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is that Sean McDermott, their head coach, kind of made his message clear in his remarks yesterday, right? I mean, he's like, we're not here to win 5 games. This is about much more than winning 5 games. And I think that the naysayers took that as, they're punting on 2017, whereas those that might understand exactly where the Bills are in their quote-unquote process might say, no. What he's saying is consistent with what he's been saying since the beginning, which is that, we have to evaluate the bigger picture, and that maybe the bigger picture here is more important because, winning 7, 8, 9 games might be good, but if there are moves that can be made that push the Bills to a more competitive team sooner than, moves that could keep them at, let's just say, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 wins this year and a possible first-round exit in the playoffs, then why wouldn't you consider those moves, which I think is what, when we boil it down to, that's basically what the Bills have been getting.
Field, as far as fantasy football goes, LeSean McCoy, the only guy you can touch on this team?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know that it makes a massive impact in terms of how do you utilize LeSean McCoy, right? I mean, he's a player that you're still starting in your lineups every single week. Is it good for his value? I think it's also fair to say, no, it's not good for his value. Tyrod Taylor may have some limitations as a thrower, but we know that, the way you space your defense out when you're facing a Tyrod Taylor is different than when you're facing a less mobile quarterback in Nathan Peterman, right? There are just natural running lanes that are created because of the way that a defense faces off against Tyrod Taylor, and one of the beneficiaries of those extra sort of wide running lanes was LeSean McCoy. So I don't know that, again, this doesn't change my outlook on LeSean McCoy to the point that I'm saying, bench LeSean McCoy, never bother with him again. But I also think it's fair to note that, hey, if you are someone that rosters LeSean McCoy, you probably feel slightly less optimistic about his prospects today than you did yesterday morning.
Field Yates with us right now, brought to you by Mohawk Army Navy. Field, when you hear about this Ben McAdoo, very brutal, honest meeting after a terrible start, is it too little too late?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we're probably past the point of return for Ben McAdoo. It seems that way, at least, guys. I think it's sort of unfair to forecast too many people's job outlook this far out. But it certainly feels like there's going to be some sort of change this offseason with the New York Giants, and whether that's just the head coach, whether it doesn't involve the head coach, whether it extends to the management level, that all remains to be seen. And we get it. The Giants are a habitually steady organization, right? They don't tend to rock the boat with dramatic shifts and moves, but at the same time, I don't think you can settle for 1-7 or 1-8, and especially after an 11-win season last year. And I think that it's a fan base that certainly clamors for much more, and a tradition that clamors for a lot more, right? This is not a team that's accustomed to being at the bottom of the NFL standings, and they're currently tumbling towards maybe not just a top 5 pick, but maybe the number 1 overall pick in the draft if the Browns, can pull it together for a couple of separate games later on this season. So I think that it's important that, the the Giants finish strong and play hard for a lot more than just Ben McAdoo's job status. Like, I don't know that his job can be saved with 2 or 3 wins, but at the same time, like, if you're going to build a culture in the NFL, like, you got to take it seriously every single Sunday. And I think there are some guys who could be playing for job security going forward based off how they perform down the stretch this season.
What should we make of the Ezekiel Elliott suspension now being accepted by Zeke and his team?
I think it's probably a case of fatigue catching up, right? I mean, if you're Zeke and you're looking at all the options you've already exhausted and you're looking at all the emotional energy you've already expended, like, how do you reconcile the fact that, like, you could keep going and keep going and keep going and then end up no closer to resolution than you have been so far, right? I mean, you probably don't have a chance to win this appeal as it is. And you're probably at the point now where you're saying to yourself, all right, so I've done everything that I possibly could, and I've given it my best, but maybe it makes more sense for us to recalibrate and say, you know something, the best thing for us this year would be to have me on the field in Week 16 and beyond. Maybe he feels like it's better to have this thing over and done with so it doesn't hover into potentially the playoffs, or maybe this is about 2018. Like, maybe he's saying, all right, we're 5-4, and I don't know if Zeke is, thinking about it pessimistically like this, but if you're at least being mindful of the standings, maybe this isn't going to be the Cowboys' year, based off how well the Eagles are playing, based off the fact that the Eagles have 2 more games against the Cowboys this season. Maybe they're saying, you know something, Zeke, like, us having you on the field for Week 1 of 2018 is the priority right now. If we can have you on the field for Week 1 of 2018, we like our chances against anybody going forward. Let's literally put this to bed. You drop the fight. Next thing you know is a chance to you get back to focusing on what you need to focus on, and the rest of us will do our best to hold the fort in the meantime.
Field, is this? I look at this and Deflategate and everything else. The CBA is so ironclad that you can fight all you want, but all you're doing is postponing the inevitable. Is that true that no matter what happened here, the end result was going to be a 6-game suspension?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it really felt that way, guys, and I understand why players will fight to the bitter end. And it's not just because, they want to not sit on the bench for 6 games or 4 games in the case of Tom Brady, but it's the name, right? It's their name that is being raked over, the coals are being raked over, right? So I understand why if you're Zeke Elliott or you're Tom Brady, you want to do your best to fight for your right to be, absolved of responsibility here. You don't want to have your name sullied, which is, I think, how a lot of players feel sometimes when they get these suspensions. At the same time, I think that the system is such that it's going to be a long shot for these players almost every single time, right? Like, maybe somebody bucks the trend, but it certainly feels like with the commissioner having essentially judge, jury, and executioner, that they're chasing a ghost in the opportunity to potentially have their suspension vacated for good.
We got Field Yates with us right now, 104.5, the team staying with the Cowboys. What do you make of the battle between Jerry Jones and the rest of the owners in the league?
Yeah, this is a compelling story, and Jerry Jones obviously is, I'd say universally regarded as not the most powerful owner in football. One of them. Heck, you can make the case that he's as powerful as almost any owner in sports, team sports right now in North America. And, part of this may be that, he's distraught with how the Zeke Elliott case played out. And part of it may be that he feels like, something, maybe it's time that we take a big step back and look at how the commissioner is being compensated. And maybe the clarity for him was the fact that the Zeke Elliott suspension took place in the manner that it did. It's unclear what the exact motivation or impetus for some of these actions would be by Jerry Jones, but he's clearly frustrated. And, I think there are people that saw what the commissioner wanted, and they're thinking to themselves, really? Like, that sounds like a lot. And I get it. He does a lot, and he's, the person responsible for keeping 32, keeping people, 32 owners happy, which is not necessarily easy to do. But, I also think that this story is about a whole lot of tentacles that maybe we don't even know about at this point of the process.
Let's get into fantasy football. Only 3 weeks left to go in most leagues' regular season. What's that big move or that transaction that can help your team get to the playoffs?
I don't think it's about rocking the boat too much right now, guys. I think it's about being forward-thinking. So whether it's rostering someone like Greg Olsen, who's probably available in a decent chunk of leagues, but isn't somebody that is even eligible to play this week. They're obviously on a bye. The Panthers are. But rostering someone like Greg Olsen or potentially rostering somebody like Corey Davis, the exciting first-round pick out of the Titans that will be on national TV later tonight. I think really, though, it's not too much changing things up in a dramatic way when, if you're close to the playoffs right now, you've gotten there for a reason because your roster's pretty solid. And if you're nowhere near the playoffs right now, then you probably need a Hail Mary as it is, or you need to be thinking about how you can improve your roster going into 2018.
Field, are you interested in eating some W's with us?
Eating some W's like Jameis Winston?
Yes.
Let's do it. I don't know how to do that, but let's do it.
I don't. Is that the craziest thing you've ever seen on the football field?
I don't know. I mean, not the craziest thing I've seen on the football field. I don't have an obvious answer, but it was a curious motivational tactic. But something like you see stuff from players and how they motivate. Like I see guys motivate themselves in unique ways, right? So I don't know why it's that much of a surprise that someone would do something that would be curious amongst a group of teammates. But yeah, I think if Jameis looks back at that 10 years from now, he'll probably laugh at the ridiculousness of it all.
Field Yates, we appreciate your time, sir.
All right, guys, no problem.